Morning, brethren.
Morning, sir.
Sabbath Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
We went to the Feast of Tabernacles. Many of us have gone to the feast for most of our lives. Some, it's just a couple of years. And yet every year we go. And we put a lot on the line to do so. We put resources, we put our energies, in fact, our very lives on the stake. Because the travel itself is also risky. But we kept doing so, and we keep doing so. We stayed there 8 days, and every year we keep asking, praying that God will let that feast be our best feast ever. This year we looked at the topic, or the theme that we use for camp, Living God's Way Today. As someone told us during the feast, this period, this life we're living in, is a kind of a rehearsal. During the feast we had a talent show, and a lot of people practiced, rehearsed. The choir kept various hours late in the morning to come together and to rehearse. And then, of course, after all the rehearsals, the essence of the rehearsal is so that the presentation or the rendition or the skits or the songs or whatever it is, when it is finally given, it will be the best and it will be acceptable. Our lives is also like that. And in this life, what God is doing is He's testing us, He's actually putting us through a rehearsal. And the question I want us to look at in this Bible study is the question, why does God test us? Why does God test us? It's not a new subject or a new topic, but I want us to just, again, remind ourselves of why God tests us. Because now we have gone to the feast and we're back. And it's a period that we need to start preparing from the moment we came back, all the way to the time when we keep the next feast. And every day of our lives, we should recognize that we're constantly being tested. So that when the time to actually give a presentation or the actual rendition, it will be the best. Every time you come together for choir practice, for those of you who are in the choir, your choir director or your choir master used to test each part, isn't it? How many of you come for that test afraid that you will not sing in the actual? How many of you go for that practice, choir practice, rehearsal? Afraid and really scared that after the rehearsal you will not be allowed to sing in the actual song. How many people have that thought in their mind? Nobody. Now, why is that? Because everybody understood the reason why they're having the rehearsal, isn't it? And everybody therefore will go there determined to put in their best, and they know that even if they are missing a part, what's likely to happen? How many of you are afraid that if I don't get it, if I make a mistake, Samson will throw me out, I won't sing again? Fly off. I'm sure nobody felt like that. And I'm sure there were some who didn't get their parts right. And Samson will say, no, you guys mix it. Or he may squeeze his face, or he may smile, or he may shake his head, or whatever. Even when you are doing the actual rendition, there are times when I will notice from Samson's body language that I can't see his front face, but I know that he's muttering them with eyes. After that rendition, did he speak to any of you, or all of you after that? Did he quit being the choir director? He still will go through the same thing with you people. And sometimes that's the approach we need to, I feel we should look at when we look at how God relates to us. And that is the way we should look at the test and the trials. The rehearsal God also putting us through right now. Okay? So why does God, test us? Let's look at a couple of quick scriptures, and then we'll look at various aspects of testing. In summary, if I want to answer that question, why does God test us? Okay, maybe before I answer it, let me ask, what do you think? Why does God test us? What do you think is the reason why we are tested by God? Bearing in mind what I just mentioned concerning choir practice. Now, the exams and the tests we do in school is a different thing entirely, isn't it? And you know why that's different? Because our teachers and the people who set exams for us are not as intimately known to us as the choir director will say in choir is. When you are sitting for a YM, or you are studying for an online master's program, or you are going to university, even though these are lecturers and your teachers in school, and you see them regularly, they may even be your class teachers who joke and laugh at you, but they are not as intimately known. The familiarity is not that much. Like somebody like Samson, who you know is one of you, and even though he's now your choir director and he has authority to say, you know, you are not singing. If Samson says somebody is not singing, what do you think will happen? You think the person can come and meet any of you and say, Samson, I'm not singing, people make sure he lets me sing? No. You know the worst that will happen? If the person is telling the rest of you, Samson, please now. Is anybody going to order Samson? That's not, I will not allow it. This person must sing. How many of you will do that to Samson? You think if all of you gang up and say, Miriam must sing, even if she doesn't sing well? Just in case Miriam doesn't sing well. Who can make Samson make Miriam sing? Nobody, isn't it? The truth also is that if Miriam is the one and she comes to me and says, sir, I've been spending time, I've been practicing, and Samson I cannot sing with them. What do you think I will say? I will not make it. There's nothing I will choose to do. Okay? But when you sit for exams in class or tests, because that is a function of acceptance or rejection, isn't it? Promotion or remaining where you are. Passing to the next class or not passing to the next class. You know, failure or pass. That is often in the back of our mind when we think of tests for school, exams, and things like that. And that makes people a little bit afraid and jittery. When I was in school, even though we are told that we are having tests next week, in fact, if they say you're having tests next month, students will say, ah, everyone will say, ah, as if it's something they know the test will come. And when the teacher announces that it's going to be next week, everybody acts as if, yay, this is their sentence. On the day of that test, you see the way people are behaving, as if, hi, I'm dead. The expectation of, hey, if I don't do it, I'm in trouble, you know, is always there in most students. Okay? And yet, that is not, how we should look at it when we consider test by God. So let's start by reading James chapter 1, verse 12. Anyone who sees it should read it. James 1:12. It's a Bible study. And I'm hoping it's not just the children who are super fast and hoping they will see. But if you do, well, you need to do something about this. Our adults who cannot open their Bible fast. Start doing that program on your marks and go. James 1:12.
Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him.
Okay, so he said, blessed is one who resists or who endures tests, temptation, difficulties, trials. He said, blessed is the one who endures it. He takes it. Okay? And then say, when the person has been tried or tested, so the person will receive a crown of life that God has promised to them that love Him. Again, that's already telling us part of why God is testing us, isn't it? God allows us to be tested. He allows us to go through difficult situations for two reasons, as you can see in this place here. From this place at least, two things here. One, so that we can get the crown of life that God Himself has promised. And two, to show that we are those people who love God. Because if we love God, that we will endure. And God has said, those who love Him and endure, whatever it is He's throwing at them, He will give them the crown of life. So oftentimes, God allows us to be tested, tempted, tried, to prove whether we do love Him, and are therefore going to be able to receive the crown He has given us. Let's look at another scripture. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. 1 1 Corinthians 10:13. Anybody who reads it?
No temptation taking you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that we are able.
Exactly.
But,
See? Continue.
But will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it.
So, there's no temptation that is happening to us, no difficulties, no trial. But what is it that I'm going through? What it is that you are going through? I'm the only one going through this thing. Nobody else is facing what I'm facing. Nobody can understand what I'm going through. Nobody can understand what I'm enduring. That's not true, it says. So there's nothing that is happening to us that is not common to man. Of course, that man is generic. He's using it as a generic word to human beings. Because the same problem that we're having, so many people are also having it. And it says, there's a promise there as well. It says God is faithful and He will not allow us to be tempted or tried beyond what we are able. And what He does is, once He allows the thing to come, He will also provide a way of escape. Which also tells us something too, in terms of why God often does test us. Okay? It also gives us another instance, another reason as to why He tests us. And the answer, if it's not obvious from here, because it says, He will not allow us to be tempted beyond what we are able, and even when we have been tempted, He will provide a way of escape so that we can bear it. So why does He even have to allow that in the first place? What is the point? Why does He even need to allow us to go through trouble, even though He knows that, you know what, it's like saying, I will give you a problem, and then I'll give you the answer to the problem. You know, teachers don't do that with the exam. They give you an exam, they give you tests. They will not give you the workout. They want you to do working yourself. But the saying, when God gives you a problem to solve, He also give you the cheat sheets. This is how you solve it. He will provide how we can solve the problem. So why does He do that then? Why does He take us through and allow us to sometimes face all we face through? Let's look at Romans chapter 5. Verse 3.
And not only that, but we are also glorying in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces
Read it up to verse 4.
perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope.
So you see, that explains another reason why God allows us to go through troubles. Many of us are weak. When things are good, when situations are nice, when people treat us well, when people relate to us the way we feel is okay, when we get what we want in life, when everything is rosy, we are the best behavior. We laugh, we smile, we are so good, we are so nice. We treat everybody like, wow, unharmed, very good. Everything is, super good, kumbaya, everything is nice. But when we face difficult situations, or when things become hard, something we want is not what we're expecting, people are not treating us the way we expect, people are treating us in ways that we do not like, then we don't behave and respond as God expects us to. And you know what the definition of character is? I look at the definition of character as Christ described it in Matthew 5, when He said, do not resist an evil person. If somebody slaps you on the right, turn the left. If somebody will take your cloak, give him your cloak. Somebody will force you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Character is when you behave in a way that is unusual for normal, average individuals to behave. So, an eye for an eye. That is normal, isn't it? But I forgive you. I will not retaliate. Not only that I forgive you, I will not retaliate, but I will actually actively still do good to you, in spite of what you have done. Now that is character. See? That is character. And God is interested in that we develop character. So, He continues to allow allow trials, difficulties, and temptation so that he can build character. Because that's what it says there. The easiest way I can explain it is people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, people like Sylvester Stallone, who have muscles. At the age of 20, Arnold Schwarzenegger was Mr. Universe. Before 6 years, he was Mr. Universe, Mr. World, like 4 times. And you know how he grew those muscles? He will take this paper and then do like this. He will do paper like this. Is that how he grew the muscles? Or he will carry this kind of thing, do like this. That's how he grew muscles. No, he was carrying weight. He will do like, he will do the thing, his muscles with age. 2 days after he started those exercises, if you've done exercises before, to either tone your body or lose weight, if you've done it before, you will know. The first 2-3 days after you've done it like this, anybody touch your body like this, it will pain you. Now, what is a normal thing to do when you run or you exercise and 2-3 days you begin to feel pains? I mean, if you bend down, say, your stomach will complain. If you try to wear clothes that is too tight, say, your hand muscles will complain. You know what somebody with character will do? The person will focus on the reason why they are doing that, and they will continue. And then the muscles become adjusted to that trouble, and they begin to expand and begin to grow. So God says He wants us to build spiritual muscles. And He says the reason, one of the reasons He allows difficulties, trials, problems in the life is that He wants us to build spiritual muscles so that I can have character. That's essential for those who are going to be kings and priests with God. It's very essential. What we find in human beings is that when human beings become kings or they come into a position of power, they use it to benefit those who they like, those who they consider are their family and their friends. They use it in a way that is very selfish and personal. Whereas those who God wants to be king expect that when they have power, responsibility, authority, they're supposed to use it to benefit everyone. Not just people they value. Paul said, be imitators of me, 1 Corinthians 11:1, as I am of Christ. The scripture talks of Christ, who they abused him, they reviled him. What did you say Jesus Christ did back in return? He cursed them. Okay, he called fire from heaven to destroy them. Did he? No, he didn't. And that's what God expects us to do. Because He's not shaping us to be the best version of ourselves. Is God shaping us to be the best version of ourselves? No, He's not. He's shaping us to be the best version of His Son. See, 2 different things entirely. The best version of us. All our righteousness are like filthy rags. The best version of myself is useless before God. The best version of you is maybe less useless before God. I don't know. But I know the best version of me is useless before God. He wants me to be the best version of His Son. Sometimes we don't take those things so seriously. It means in every single thing we do, we should be asking this question: what will Jesus do? And until we get to that level where we are reacting and responding closer to how He wants us to, God keeps on allowing troubles. And we read from that James 1:2 that He has a crown that He wants to give us. And that crown will only give to those who love Him. And how will He know the ones who love Him? Those who endure whatever it is He allows to come into their lives. That's what it says. So why does God test us? Why does He allow us to go through difficult situations? Because He loves us. He has a crown for us. And He wants us to develop character. Second reason. Look at Proverbs chapter 17 verse 3.
The refining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but not test the heart.
Okay, look at that statement. The refining pot is for silver, and the furnace, the burning fire, is for gold, but the Lord tries the hearts. So, these statements too, you need to look at what is implying. when some of you must have read that story before, a silversmith will take silver. You know, silver and gold are very precious metals. Everybody wants to wear gold earring. Gold is gold that. It's some of the most precious things in the world. Okay? When they take gold in its raw form, it has a lot of impurities mixed with it. The only way they can get pure gold is the silversmith. The same way with the silversmith and the goldsmith. They will put it in fire. The fire is not to destroy the gold or the silver. The hotter the fire is, the faster it burns up all the impurities in the gold and the silver. And with all the impurities burnt off, see, gold and silver will stay. They will not be destroyed. Okay? They will not be destroyed by fire. They will melt, but they will still be gold. But as they are melting, what is happening is that they are losing their grip and the bond and the cohesion they have with those impurities that makes them look so big. The things that make them look so much, you can take a whole ore of gold as big as this, and by the time you finish purifying it, sifting it, the gold you get from it may just be maybe about half of this thing. But that's small gold. The worth may be enough to almost build this house, or if not more than build this house. So the quality of gold and silver is brought out when you put them through fire. Oftentimes as Christians, while we may technically or intellectually know that God tries us, we don't really try to reason around it, especially when things are difficult for us. We don't consider those things and talk ourselves through that process to ask God, why is God allowing me to go through this? Why am I facing this difficulty? Why is this happening to me? As we are asking those questions, what we ought to be doing is to be understanding and telling ourselves or reminding ourselves of why God allows us to go through those things. Because, you know, there are things in us that God wants to take care of. And He wants us to be as refined and as pure individuals as can be, like a son. You know, in Ephesians 4, 11 to 16, it gives the reason why God allows various responsibilities and how He brings the church together. And towards the end of it, it mentions that this is for the edification of the body of Christ, till we all attain the nature of the stature of the fullness of Christ. One other reason why God allows us to go through trial, we can easily find that in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay? But before we... Okay, maybe let's read Deuteronomy chapter 8. Let's come to Deuteronomy chapter 8. We will read verse 2. Somebody will read verse 2. And somebody will read verse 16. Deuteronomy chapter 8.
And you shall remember all this.
Okay, Toby should read verse 2. And Bobby will read verse 16. Deuteronomy chapter 2. Okay, 8, verse 2. Deuteronomy 8:2.
And you shall remember all the way which the Lord your God has led these 40 years in the wilderness.
Hold on. He's saying the Israelites should remember. The word they use for remember is that you shall mark. In fact, let me see. Okay, that word for remember, let me see, verse, okay, is the Hebrew word zakah. The Hebrew word zakah. And it means to mark, that is to take note of. It also means to mention it, to bring it to mind, to think about, and to talk of. That word, zakah. It says you shall bring to your mind. You shall remember, tell it to yourself. Talk about it. Mention it to yourself. That's what it's saying. All the bad, difficult things they went through, he's telling them they should remember all those difficult situations that God took them through. And he's telling them the reason why. Continue reading there. Toby.
To humble you and test you.
So do what? To humble them and to test them. Continue.
To know what is
So, again, I looked at the word used there. For example, when it said to humble you, in the Old King James, what word is used in the Old King James? To prove you. To prove you. See? It says, I need you to talk about, to think of, to recount, to remember those difficult situations that you had to go through. And the essence of it was to prove you, to humble. Actually, it's also from the root word, that word humble, H6031 of Strong's numbers. It is honor. And it simply means to flatten. Can you imagine? To beat down, to depress, literally. Something that is like this, to press it down. It also says to abase, which means to bring it, to make it look almost as if it doesn't worth much. To let you recognize how not so valuable you are in your own eyes. To use force, to deflate, to humble. So he takes us through difficult situations, he tests us so that he can bring us down. And what is the purpose of bringing us down? So that is not the main reason. The reason why he is allowing us to come down is so that we can see ourselves for how we are, and so that we can show ourselves to be better as he wants us to be. Because it says to humble you, and then look at what it says, to know. The word to know is nasa, almost like NASA. And it means to prove, to assay, for observation. That is to observe, to show some measure of care in looking at recognition. It also means causative instruction. That is, by causing something by the things you do, I'm understanding or knowing a little bit more. To discern, to discover, to be endued with familiarity. So it says God wants to know, to understand, and to be familiar with the things we will do concerning that which he has asked us to do. So that's why he sometimes puts us through trial. Because it is when people are going through trials that people make choices, isn't it? I was watching a video of a man who was so mad, so angry, and was cursing he said, all of you big pastors I have in Nigeria, I don't know if some of you will have seen it, it's Yoruba they were saying, all of you, he was so mad as I was making that video, that the judgment of God will come upon you and your children. You will not enjoy your children. All your children, they will all die and have. He was just cursing. I was like, okay, this is much. He was cursing them. Say your children, your generation, God will punish all of you. You will be children. And I was saying all of them, they travel abroad. And they see what is happening in other countries. And they'll come back to Nigeria because they use money. They used to use money to carry money to them in the house every Sunday when they have church. All of them, they keep their mouth shut. They don't say anything. They will say, Daddy Gio. Which stupid Daddy Gio is that? Daddy Gio, what is Daddy Gio? Say, which Daddy Gio are you? When you see people who are suffering, people are dying, and you keep your mouth shut. If you know you have power, you say you have power, you say you can raise the disease, you say you can heal it. All the people who are suffering in this country, all these are leaders who are not doing what they're supposed to. You don't go there and you don't curse God and curse all of them and say, okay, all of you people, this is going to happen in your life if you don't change if you don't make good policy. They are not saying all those things. People are keeping your mouth shut. And the man was talking and was angry and was upset. And all the reason why he was upset was he said he went to, until he traveled abroad. He said he was in Germany. They gave him free food 2 times. And he doesn't have money. He said, in fact, in their road, they make allowance for the bus. If you are a crippled person, they make allowance for where you will stay. If you are in a wheelchair, even on the road, they have places by the side of the way you can roll your wheelchair. They think of both the good, the bad, and the ugly, the healthy and the unhealthy in their society. Say he went to, where they say he went to one country in Europe, and he saw lots of Nigerians, plenty women who are just doing prostitution there. And he was asking them, as he was teaching them and talking to them, and they were like, sir, what are we going to do now? Say me, I have 4 children in Nigeria. My husband abandoned me, and I don't know how to take care of them. So I have to come to this country and do prostitution so I can make money now. There's no job now. What job do you want me to do? Then he will cause all those pastors again and our government again. Say, see, those people are there. Instead of you to provide job for them. Now, my point is, see, those people they were saying, because things were hard, because things were difficult. What choice do I have? Isn't that what most of us used to say? Most people used to say, what choice do I have? Those who steal will say, well, what do I have? What choice do I have? The man said he lost his wife 4 years ago because he could not pay 2,000 naira. He could not pay 2,000 naira. And the hospital refused to treat his wife. They refused. And he had no choice. He begged them, pleaded. He was going to try and get money, they refused. He had to carry the woman home. Before he could run around to see if he could get him money to say his wife died. And the wife left him with 4 children, all of them young kids. Said the day they were burying his wife, said the son looked at him and said, Daddy, they have thrown mommy inside home. Please let us go and get her out. Please let us go and get her out. When are we get here to bring mommy home? And so the man was talking with so much heat, so much annoyance, and he was cursing, and he was cursing, he said he has used his evil ways that doesn't have money. 15 children, I've sent 15 children, I've sponsored them in school. 15 children, I don't have money. All you people, you have all this money, you are buying private jets and doing this and so. And was cursing them and cursing them. Okay, causality, the law of causality. So how many of us will look at that man and say, is he saying anything that is wrong? All the reason that he's saying that people travel abroad, they see the development, they see how the society is taking care of its people. They say that children finish school, they don't have jobs. Many of them are going to 419 and they're going into all this problem, all these things that they're doing. And it's therefore, if he believes it is justifiable reason to curse the children and the fathers and generations of all those people who believe should have done something like that. What did the Bible say concerning how we should speak with our mouths? Did God mean, anybody remind me, what that man was saying in that video? It is true, right? About all the injustices. But does it justify cursing? Did the Bible not say you should bless with our mouths and not do what? And not curse. So there are trouble, trials, problems everywhere. But fortunately, the man notices all those trouble, trials, and problems. He also has faced some of them. But he didn't develop character. They say he's doing what normally everybody would do. See, character is seeing what is happening and facing trouble, trials, difficulties, and all the troubles in this life. And yet, not letting those things make us bitter, angry, turn against God, or to respond in kind. Like you say in Yoruba, yet there be no good. For learning. Learn that, please. Tell us what. Miriam, help me, Gary. And yet there be no good. For learning. I don't know why they don't want to do their brothers back. It's simply talking about retaliation. Okay, yes, Chimas is raising up son. An old Yoruba saying, this hen has spilled my medicine. I want to break its eggs. And so, when we face difficulties, God says He wants to know whether in the midst of those difficulties, He wants to prove what is inside us. Are we going to still do what He expects us to do? Are we going to behave as He will have us behave? Or we're going to say, because of this trouble, because of this situation, you know what? Well, what can I do now? This is what I'm going to do. And that's one of the reasons why we go through tests. All of us have to pass this test in life. We have to. And that's God is committed to it. And He is committed and He's not going to give up. Because at the back of God's intention of His mind is that we should all do well. See, when you sit for tests and exams in school, if we don't do well, they will fail us. But when they fail, in secondary school, when students don't pass tests and exams, do they kick them out of the school? Do they kick them out? What will they do? They just repeat, is it not? Now, in the university, they can kick people out. Advice to withdraw. You reach P1, you reach P2, provision 1, provision 2. Say this one cannot pass. Even this one stay for the next 4 years, this one cannot go beyond this. And they call it advised to withdraw. Since the 9th year, I said, my friend, they go. Sometimes what they do is, they will just say, okay, let's just keep pushing them. And they used to call it movement of the people. Let them just move them out. Abroad, they don't use pass or fail, and they don't use pass mark, whether it's 10%, 20%. They don't even use it. They just grade them, and what they just do is they just put them in different categories in the class. They say, don't let anybody say they pass or they fail or they didn't do well. And that's sometimes part of the problem. But the thing is, with God, when He gives us tests, He's not really interested in whether we pass or fail. It's important to Him that we pass. But what is important to Him is to know that we have learned enough and we're willing to apply ourselves so that we will succeed. And if we don't do well, He's committed to continue to give us all the resources we need to do well. Because that's what He is. Hebrews 13:5. What is there? Like the first analogy I gave in the morning. I said, every time the choir goes to practice, nobody is afraid that if I don't do well, I will not sing. Everybody knows they're going there and they'll get all the support and all the encouragement and all the correction that they need to be able to present. Nobody goes there thinking, hey, if I don't sing well, something will mix me up. It will not allow me to sing. But everybody goes there and they will put in there, if they don't get it right, either the person singing with them or the choir director or somebody there will correct them, and of course they ultimately know that they're going to present. It's not even in anybody's mind that I will not present. But of course, if someone is not doing well, and the person is, Samson, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone is not doing well, and you correct the person, and the person refuses to relax, and say, no, this is the thing I want to sing, will you let the person sing? See the difference. The difference is that you will look at the attitude and the desire of the person, isn't it? There are people who have joined the choir maybe a month or two to the time where you're supposed to sing, isn't it? You know why I personally don't even tell us? I even had a discussion with him on that. I said, I'm hoping that when you allow people to join the choir who have not practiced with you, in fact, the instruction I'm giving now is that if someone hasn't practiced with you or is not regular, for specific reasons, somebody just, you don't see anybody for like 3 months, and then the person comes again and sits with the choir. On principle, I don't even want to hear whether that person is the best musician in the world. I'm going to mix the person. But here's the thing. I told Samson, I said, buddy, I'm hoping that when people join the choir, because they have not practiced with you over time, I'm hoping it's not those people that often cause some of the problems there. He said, no, he said there are sometimes some who will come late. And very quickly, what happens? They pick up, and they're doing okay. And it sees the potential, so he allows them to sing. I said, okay, I just want to be sure that I'm not just putting sentiments. Now, whether they know how to sing or they know how to sing, the more people in the choir, the better. No, he said, no, it doesn't do that. I said, fine, just make sure, whoever you test, it's not just that I want people to be there. You have to go beyond that. And he says, so oftentimes the thing is that Samson will watch, or the choir director will watch your intention. What you apply, what you put in, and the effort, and how you are making progress. And he is ready to correct and work with as much as you are willing to. As long as the person is doing what is willing to. That's the way God does too when it comes to tests. Okay? Who is reading?
And it says, let your conversation be without comfortness.
Who are you reading? Hebrews 13:5. Okay?
Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things that ye have, for he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee.
That is a promise. I will never leave you or forsake you. Which means, no matter what, God's not going to give up on us. He wants us to pass the test, and He will keep on trying us. How many of us will be able to say at the end of our lives what Paul said when he was writing to Timothy? So let's read there. Incidentally, every time God gives us a test, every time we're going through difficult situations, that's something I always tell myself too. Okay? As we have been pained, He Himself is also been pained. as we're suffering, he's also feeling what we are feeling with us as well. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. 2 Timothy 4, 7 and 8. This is Paul's statement. I'm hoping all of us should be able to say this at the end of my life. 2 Timothy 4, 7 and 8.
I have fought a good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith.
I have kept the faith.
Finally, there is laid up for me of righteousness, which the Lord, righteous God, will give to me one that is good, and not to me only, but also to all who have loved me.
Exactly. Just as we read in that James chapter 1, verse 12, that God allows us to go through trials because he has a crown that he wants to give us, and he also wants to give those crowns to those who love him. And the only way he will know those who love him is to allow them to go through difficult situations. He allows people to relate to them in a way that is not ideal. He allows them to suffer need of something that they want, something that they expect that they don't get it when they want to get it, or there is a problem, a disease, an illness, or something, or whatever it is that they will go through. And he wants to know whether in the midst of all those troubles and trials, they will still try to always say, what would Jesus do? And still develop that character of doing the things that I expected, and not saying, well, what can I do? I can't do this, I can't do this. He wants us to be more, less and less and less of ourselves, and more a version of himself. That's why we go through difficulties, that's why we go through trials. So I would say that a trial or test that God allows in our lives, it has three functions, majorly. One, it prepares us for future achievement. Students who have to take tests periodically will eventually do an exam and they will pass and they are promoted. The promotion eventually will lead to them getting maybe a degree, and then they will get a job and they will be able to take care of themselves. So test trials prepare us for a future, achievement. Just like if we endure, as it says in James 1:12, there is a crown that God is waiting to give to us. And it's proof that we do love him. And the reason he's giving a crown is so that people who get that crown can reign and rule with the Son Jesus Christ. Let's turn to 1 Samuel 17. That little thing explains something else as well. 1 Samuel 17, from verse 34 to 37. There are 4 verses there. Somebody will read 2 verses, and another person will read the next 2 verses. So who's reading first?
But David said to Saul,
Yeah.
your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took the lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from his mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard, and struck and killed it.
Okay, stop. Next, another person will read the next 2 verses.
The servant has killed those lion and is uncircumcised will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God.
That's 7.
Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the power of the lion and from the power of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistines. And Saul said to David, go, the Lord be with you.
Okay. So look at that statement there. It looks like just a story of an adventure of a young man. But it is actually God preparing David for something greater. Because if you look at this statement in verse 37, he said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion, and even the hand of the bear, said he will deliver these Philistines into my hand. So he had, by having to face a lion, by having to face a bear, God was preparing him to have the confidence to attack Goliath. Because wasn't that what David said? I faced the lion, I faced a bear, and I came out on top. And I know it's not because of me. And it's because God gave me the strength, the courage, the power to do so. So, I'm going to face this Philistine. You know the benefit, the achievement of David when he killed Philistine? He got to marry a princess. His family house, they cannot pay tax again. All their generation in Israel. And he became a national hero. That's something, isn't it? So, every trial we face that we can overcome, sometimes it helps also because you don't know who may be going through the same problem around you, that you can come back and say, you know what? I actually faced this thing 4 years ago. And guess what? I thought I too felt like this, I felt like this, I felt like this. You may not even know how the person is feeling. You may just be able to say, look, there was a time when I went through something similar to what I went through. And I thought it was going to be the end of the world. But guess what? This was what I said. And you know, see me, I'm standing here. And you can explain that and use it as an example for someone. And it will encourage someone else. And the person will have also done well. And remember what Christ said concerning every little person will help. What did he say? Whatever we do for any little one of his own shall we not be reward. We will not lose our reward. That's what he says. And for every good deed we do, he said we shall not lose our reward. So, trials, therefore, oftentimes God allows because He's planning to give us something great in the future. He's planning to give us something better. And He often, therefore, wants to be sure we are worthy of it, that we can handle it when He gives it to us. You know, some people, when they want money. Oftentimes, having that money is what will kill them. Most youngsters want to have a car of their own very quickly. You know the people who often die the most in accidents? Young men. I want to have a car, I want to be able to provide a vehicle. As soon as they start working, like what they do is they quickly get and they buy a car. They have not matured, they have not reached anywhere, and they go and get a car. And guess what happens? When they're on the road, this car can go 250 kilometers. They want to push it at 220. I want to show I'm the king of the road. And they will drive so fast, just view, coming out of vehicles up and down, and doing as if their life is made of iron. Bill Cosby went to buy a Ferrari for his 16-year-old son. In less than 6 months, the guy killed himself. And Bill Cosby loved his son so much, and he thought buying him a car, a very fast car, very expensive, very fast car. And the guy took it out in a joyride with his friends, and he crashed it and he died. Pew! I know a man who has 2 sons, 2 years apart. And at the age of 15, he will allow the younger son to carry the vehicle and drive it out on his own. If you say, I'm going somewhere, I can give you the car. And he will refuse the older son, who was 17, to take the car out. The reason was because the younger son seems level-headed. He's not often impressed. He doesn't carry lots of friends around. He's a fairly studious guy. Okay? Doesn't even feel like, I want to drive the car. He's going out. Say, take the car now, take the car and drive out. Hey, he's just there, I'm going. Hey, you can go, take the car now and go. The other son was, Daddy, I want to go and see this person. Can I have the car? Say, no, enter public transport. It reminds me of the movie I've watched before. It's an old one. Dr. Strange. And he was learning, skills. And one of the people he met there, who has been learning that same skill for more than 10, 15 years or so, model, he wanted to succeed the master, to be the next master. And the master said, you are not going to be the next supreme king of the court. He said, why? Who do you think is more worthy? He said, the one who does not seek it. Sometimes the things we want so much from God, sometimes He doesn't give us. Because maybe He realizes if He gives us this thing, maybe what will take us away from Him. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes success or whatever it is we want in life, when we get it, it takes us away from God. Sometimes it doesn't. And yet what He wants to give us, He feels is more important. And He wants us to develop that character first. So the earlier we can start growing in character, and learn to develop endurance, and learn to develop perseverance, and learn to, what do you do? Hey, someone told me one time that you need 7 or 10 dogs to be guarding your house. So daughters are good. Those of you have daughters. I had 3 already. Maybe I have to get 5 more. A second reason that we read also, as we read Deuteronomy chapter 8, that's why God often allows us to go through tests, is because God wants to prove us. He wants to prove whether this He wants to give us, we deserve it, we're worthy of it. Verse 16 of Deuteronomy chapter 8. Somebody was supposed to read that part. Deuteronomy 8:16. Deuteronomy 8:16.
Who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that He might humble you and that He might test you, to do you good in the end.
You see, to humble them, to test them, and to do them good in the end. See, in verse 2 it says to prove what was in their heart, to know what's in their heart, whether they will keep His laws. But the ultimate aim is actually to do them good in the end. He's just trying to prove them, to know, so that I can be familiar, understand, to be aware, to know that yes, these are people I can rely on, and they are worthy of what I want to give them. When Isaiah 63 verse 9, quickly. Isaiah 63 verse 9.
In all their affliction He was afflicted, and the danger of the present saved them. In His love and His fixing He redeemed them, and He bore them and carried them all the days of old.
Okay. What this is saying is that as we are going through difficulties and trials, as we are feeling pain, God is also feeling pain. See? As we're hurting, He's also hurting. So it's not as if He's hurting us and He's enjoying it here. He's in trouble. Good. Good. Let me see whether He will enjoy it well. No. As we are going through that trials and as we continue to endure it and feel that pain, He is also feeling that pain with us. It's like a father who carries his son and he says, give me a bonbon. And as he gives him one, foul, foul. He's wincing inside. He's feeling the pain that guy is feeling as he's wiping his bonbon. And at the end of it, it feels so terrible, it feels so bad that I had to beat him. But because he believes, I need to do this. Why am I beating him? Because I love him. It is He whom the Father loves, He does what? He chastises. If it's a bastard, whichever happens to him, none of my business. No matter what they do, you just ignore them. You just leave them. We shouldn't be happy when that happens to us. So God often, therefore, allows those kind of things in our lives. And He allows them not because they enjoy it, because even Himself is feeling the trouble. Okay? And of course, final thing we read again from Scripture is that God allows us to go through trials and difficulties so that He can clean us and remove impurities from us. He tests us so that He can take away all the things that make us proud, those weaknesses and all those things that we have, that we hold on to, the things that make us proud, puffed up, that we think we are better, or that makes us maybe look down on other people and think we are higher than them. That doesn't allow us to treat others as we should treat them. He wants to take those things out of our life sometimes, therefore He afflicts us. So if we are learning to treat individuals, if we're so humble in the way we relate to one another, and we're so low in the way we think of ourselves and how we affect other people, remembering that with the measure we measure, it shall be measured unto us. Okay? We're also going to simply prolong times of all those testing. Look at Isaiah 48 verse 10. Isaiah 48 verse 10.
Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction.
Read verse 11.
For my own sake, I will do it. For how should my name be profaned, and I will not give my glory to another?
See, God is seeing that He is purifying those children, us. See, He's purifying us, not as silver. Something more important, more valuable than silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. So God puts us in the crucibles of trials and allows us to face pain here and there, things that are difficult, so that it can deflate us. Sometimes we have thoughts. We allow feelings, opinions, views, ways of reaction that is totally against anything that God wants. God who so much looked at all of us. And the scripture says, while we were still sinners, He died for us. And you know, when it says He died for us, you know it includes everyone, right? The mad person on the street, the bus conductor that is in the room, the lowest person in this room, the fattest person in this room, the most capable, and the least capable in this place. Christ died for everyone, and all of us are valuable in His sight. The smallest thought, action, reaction, behavior that doesn't value one another as He values us is an affront to God. And sometimes, because He needs to remove all impurities in us, He will find areas that will pinch us the most, and He will afflict us in those places. And He wants us to simply look down at ourselves in a very humble way. To be humble in the way we look at ourselves, and the way we relate to one another, and the way we do things. Thoughts that we shouldn't think, He doesn't want it to come to our head, concerning how we think we are, or how we view other people around us. He wants us to have that sober judgment. That's why He says He humbles us. And He said, I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. In the furnace of affliction. And God says He's doing those things for His sake. I mean, what He wants to give us is huge. We're going to carry His name. So He wants to be sure those who are going to carry my name, and He's going to make sure that they are worthy of it. And they will not abuse that privilege. They will not feel pompous, overinflated. And remember, it constantly says in many places, God resists the proud. He gives grace to the humble. So the purpose of tests or trials is not pain. Because when we are going through those pain, God Himself is feeling the pain on our behalf as well. He's also been pain that we're going through that pain. So the purpose is not pain. But pain is a part of it. And the pain is simply to allow us to actually show out how well we recognize who we serve. So tests and trials that God allows is for progress, not for pain. It's for purity, not for punishment. And God seeks true prosperity for us. We know where it says in John, right? 1 John 3 verse 2. What's there? Closing. 1 John 3 2. What's there? Who's reading? 3 John 2 actually. 3 John 2. I wish I were. Yes, exactly. 3 John 2. Who's going to read it? It's a memory verse. I just want to read it back. Is there why they're reading it? Or who is that?
Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers.
Exactly. I wish, I pray that you shall prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. What he used there? Notice he used prosper twice, right? He used prosper twice. The first prosper is physical prosperity, to do well, to be okay, to be comfortable. And then he says that we will be in good health. But he says that the most important, the first, is that as our soul, our minds, the way we relate, the way we behave, the way we think, the way we process, the way we respond, is as God will respond. So as our soul is prospering, that is growing and improving, so he wants us to prosper physically as well as health-wise. So God brings tests in our lives, not for pain, but for progress. Not for punishment, but for purity. Because he has a gift he wants to give us. But he doesn't want to give it to proud people. He doesn't want to give it to pompous people. He doesn't want to give it to vindictive people. He doesn't want to give it to people who treat people as they deserve, but who treat people with mercy as they want to be treated. And most importantly, we need to recognize that when we go through difficulties and trials and everything like that, it's a proving ground. And the person who is proving us is committed to us succeeding. And as long as we never give up, and we keep trying to improve, then he will succeed. And he will give us that crown which he has prepared for us. Any question? Yes, please.
There is a comment that God made to Abraham. He said, "Now I know."
Genesis 22, verse 12.
So my question is, the Bible says God is all-knowing. Does it mean that
He doesn't know
he
that.
doesn't know before that Abraham will respond positively?
Yes. I've actually had to think of that one. And I will answer this to you without being able to actually prove to you, show you any scripture for that. And I will only be able to use what I would call the spirit of a sound mind that God said He has given us. Yes, God is all-knowing. And yes, God is all-powerful. In fact, He says He speaks of things that are not yet happening, even before they've happened. And He says He brings to pass those things that He has said. So if God says this will happen, now we know in the Bible, He prophesied concerning many nations and many people. Darius, the prophecy about what Darius will do, was given almost 200 years before Darius was even born. His father was not even living then, before he mentioned that Darius is going to use him, to punish his people and to also restore 70 years prophecy to bring them back to their place. So that was God. Now, when it comes to us human beings, God exercised His ability. For example, if God is all-knowing, that means God cannot forget, right? He can't forget things, isn't it? But the scripture says, as far as the east is from the west, so far He will remove our sins from you. And He says, I will remember your sins no more. Okay, does it mean He's just saying it for the sake of saying it? Does God exaggerate? Does it say what it doesn't mean? If God says, I will remember your sins no more, I will so much forget, forgive, and take away your sins, I will forget, I will not remember it again. Is He saying the truth? He's saying the truth. He chose to have what is called total recall and total forgetfulness. He can choose to. So the same way I look at human beings, if indeed God knows all our choices and what we will do, it's a waste of time and a fallacy. It's just a game as far as it's concerned, our calling as Christians. Because God knows that this one is going to go to my kingdom. This one is going to go to the lake of fire. This one is going to become a thief. This one is going to become a murderer. This one, if God knows, I get my point. Then what's the point? There's no truth test. It's all a game then. He already knows. Right? He knows all the end moves. He knows all the opening moves. He knows the middle moves. So He knows, okay, so this one, if I say come this way, this one will continue to go until after this one, he will just come back and come this way, isn't it? But here's what God chose to do. He could have known everything we will do, but He chose not to know. He chose not to know. He chose not to know. So that He would therefore push all the options there in front of us. And He chose to close His eyes from the possibility. I will explain it this way. It's like the statement in Ecclesiastes that don't be quick, don't be eager to want to know what your servants are saying behind you. So, I have servants. Okay, I look at it this way. See, there's a camera in this place here. See at the back there. I have cameras in different parts of the office, of the house. And I also have camera in the passage upstairs. And there's a camera in one of the offices downstairs. And there's a camera also in the office upstairs. So, camera in the two parlors as well. There's no camera in the children's room. There's none in the Rotiwal room. There's none in the guest house. There's none in, I put cameras in the public places. Okay? And the only place that I put camera that is not public is the offices of my staff. Now, I can actually be watching and know everything my staff is doing and saying. Okay? It's all there. It's also been recorded. Whether they are busy working or they are busy talking, whether they are busy doing their own thing, they are doing their supposed to work, I can know. But I have never gone to review the recordings in any of the offices to see, let me see, okay, let me go through and see how many times did this one work, how many times did this one talk. Well, are they talking business or are they talking personality? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? I've never gone to review it. Not once. Where Samson was. The MD of the company was one time trying to put a GPS tracker on all the vehicles so that I can know where all the cars are at any point in time. And some of the staff, management was saying you should not put it there. He said he wants to put it there. He said, but he's not putting it there because he wants to start looking at where the staff is or where the staff is. It's a company vehicle. So you are based in Lagos. You're supposed to be in Lagos. But you see, the reason why I decided to let people know that thing is actually been in all those vehicles. They didn't know. He wanted to let people know that it's there for two reasons. One, somebody was supposed to be working Akure, and his itinerary and his report shows he was in Akure. And then he had an accident with his vehicle. And the accident was in Sokoto. So he was supposed to be in Akure, but he wasn't working where he was supposed to work. He went for a private function in Sokoto. Now it's a company vehicle, but it's given to him. Okay? The technical thing is that during the weekdays when you're supposed to be working, you stay around your area. And weekends, if you know you are not staying in your area, you want to go and visit someone, don't use the company vehicle. But he said he doesn't care, that one doesn't concern him. He wants to give them what? Freedom. Let them be responsible. If you know you are going out of town, I need you to be able to say, I'm going to go out of town on weekends. I'm going for a friend's wedding. I'm going to visit my parents. So I'll not be around. But if you are telling me that you are in Lagos, or you told me you had an accident with your car, it's a total write-off, and you say it's in Lagos where it happened, you know what? You can go and check the record and see the GPS location. And realize, oh, so you mean you have this accident in Lagos? Okay, but according to the record, as at the time when you say you had the accident, you're actually in Ogbomoso. So he said the reason for putting those GPS there is not because he wants to start watching them up and down. He wants them to behave responsibly. So I feel that God too could have known our choices. He could look forward in time and see, okay, what would this person do? But he wants to relate with us live. He wants that personal one-on-one relationship. And he expects that we will make right choices. And so he chose not to know. If he chose to know, he could have. We know instances sometimes in people's life, he predicted what they would do, isn't it? But when it comes to our choice to respond, to do what he wants to do, he chose not to know. And he wants to work with us so that he molds our character, our nature, gradually over time. And that we keep growing and growing and growing until we reach the perfection of the house. Cameras in my staff room, it's not for me to spy on them. I just want them to know that, okay, there's a camera there. If they choose to say they want to start fighting, they will, this is why we know that we're fighting. Or if we should fight, while I was, I can go and review the camera, so let me see what caused the problem. I know who said what, who said what. Sometimes the thought that, oh, there's a camera there, may make some be able to do what they're supposed to do, isn't it? I've never gone to review it. Even the one in the sitting room, I've never gone to review. Let me see what I sometimes just do is, especially when I'm out of the town or something, and all these kids are in the house. And then I will check, and I will call and say, Toby, what are you doing? You and this person, why are you two fighting like that? Blah, 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 blah. Or time when they are here during the holidays, and then I will call them and I will say, tell Nini that I'm looking at her. Why is she doing this? If I see her jump again on it, I'm sure they'll be wondering, say, point to the camera, see the camera there. And that is looking at, so you see, they will not know whether I'm looking at them, I'm looking at them. And it will make them behave. So I believe God also, knowing that he knows all things, he believes all things, he's quite capable of, knowing our choices, but he chose not to know. Because he wants us to develop that character of making choices as we go along and improving over time. That's what it is. That's the best I can answer. For example, there are some who went bad not too long ago and they are already feeling sleepy. You see the eyes already doing like this. Now, I said it so that they will learn to try and make sure they stay at home. Okay, we'll start service 5 minutes. Short one.